Hey everybody, on this episode of Midnight Garage, I'm going to get back to work on the Chevy 2 project. So it's been a little while, but it's time to get back to work on this guy, at least for a little bit. Now, if you haven't watched that first video, go back and check that out, where I've narrowed the floor, narrowed the frame rails, got everything ready for the mini tubs. Mini tubs have been fit, they're just not welded in yet because I'm going to be putting quarter panels on. We'd kind of left it because I ran out of parts. I was waiting for this tail panel, which I have quarter panels now. So, I think what I'm going to do, because this is what was holding me up, I think I'm going to tackle that first, and then I can kind of get this, make sure this whole back structure is square. So these are new frame rail sections at the back, and then I repaired and narrowed the frame rails for the mini tubs. So if I can get this back panel in, this can all be welded solid. We'll have the back end of the car all square, and then we'll move on to putting on the quarter panels. If you follow the channel at all, you probably noticed videos have been a little not as frequent as they used to be. I mean, I've been kind of, well, I just finished up this truck, which is rockers and cab corners, which I have done GM rockers and cab corners videos before. The reason I'm working on the Chevy 2 is it's Tuesday today, but the job I had booked for yesterday was a GM truck for rockers and cab corners, but he pushed it back. Hopefully I'm going to have it here tomorrow, but again, I won't be making a video on that because, you know, go back through my playlist and you'll see I've done it before. If that's something that interests you, but so this might be just kind of a half a day. I'm going to work on this for now, but we'll get the video started and we'll get some of the work started. So yeah, I'm going to get set up. I'm going to decide exactly what I'm going to do. So when I first ordered the back panel, what I thought I was ordering this full piece, this piece here, but what I got was this piece, which is the upper. So anyway, my phone's ringing. I'm going to answer that. We'll be right back. So I'm just going to bring you guys in periodically as I strip this thing apart. So I got that top cross piece out. So now I'm going to move on to this back panel. Now, you're going to see that I'm not bothering to put bracing or square anything up in this thing because there's no point. By the time I have everything apart, there's going to be nothing to brace. So, we'll have a look at our trunk gaps before. Now the trunk's up a little bit at the back, but that's because these hinges are not welded to the wheel tubs, so they need to kind of roll in a little bit, which brings that down, but that's not a big deal. But so we eyeball our gaps beforehand. So, I mean, they're not perfect, but they're decent. So because I'm going to be cutting this tail panel out, we're going to get those frame rails back where they need to be, but then we're going to be cutting these quarter panels off anyway, and they're just going to be welded back on where they need to be. So there's just no reason to spend a bunch of time bracing this when it's all coming out anyway. So anyway, I'm going to move on to that back panel, bring you guys in for a look. So there's our tail panel cut out. So you can see, like I was saying, no point bracing stuff because there's going to be nothing to brace to. You know, we're still going to just keep an eye on all of our gaps and all of our measurements. So I'm still bang on level because of the way I've got the back end blocked up. And now the rest of the tail panel, see, it's spot welded to this tail light panel. So I need to take those spot welds out. But then I remembered that we're putting these Acadian tail light panels in here so we can run the cooler looking Acadian tail lights rather than the Nova tail lights. So, what I need to figure out now is how much of this taillight panel I'm going to use. And this is where it might get a little bit tricky, but it's because these are not full quarter panels. So you can see these just go about an inch over the lip. So those quarter panels would go to about here. What I would do, I suspect I'll be trimming the quarter panels around about here, keeping that line intact. So this part and the top is staying. So that's where I have to decide exactly how I'm going to do those taillight panels. So I'm gonna have to think on that one a little bit. I'll bring you guys back when I figure out for myself how I'm gonna do this. Well, hello everyone. I don't remember exactly where I left off. It's been about a week since I was filming on this last. I had another job I had to do, so that's done. I've got a little window to work on this for a short time again. So I know we were kind of fitting things up in the back end here last time. So what I have gone ahead now and done is I've got this back panel all clamped into place. So everything has been fitted. Everything has been measured. It is where it's going to live. I know I was talking about putting these tail light pockets in, but I didn't realize the right side is actually kind of wasted. It's super rusty. So I've decided I'm just going to carry on with everything else. We'll revisit those later. I have a feeling I may just trim out in here, put the new pocket in, and just butt match them in nicely there. That way I was able to save this factory bit here. So I think I was going to try and start separating that. It would have just made a mess, just like what happened on this one, and then this one's a lot worse. But anyway, enough of that. So this is squared up. It is in place. I spent a lot of time getting her just right. So everything's good there. I'm happy with all of that. So I think what I'm going to do, weld in this back panel, and then we'll move on to the second piece of the back panel, which is, that one's pretty simple. And then I'll bring you guys back for a look once I've got this kind of solid-ish. Oh yeah, and the other thing you want to always be keeping an eye on, obviously, too, is your door gaps when you have a car kind of jacked up like this. So this latch is kind of screwy, but yeah, everything is staying in place. So check, double check. Now, this one is hanging down a little bit in the back. You can see this door is dragging, but that's just hinges and adjustment, so that's not actually the car is shifted. That was like that before, so you can see, actually, yeah, so you can see where gap there gets smaller towards the back. So yeah, this door is just dropped, so that is not a big thing. So anyway, I'm going to do some welding, and we'll come back and start fitting the next piece. So I've jumped ahead a little bit. Actually forgot you guys were here with me. So I've gone ahead and welded in this piece of the back panel. So that's the whole back panel welded in now. I've got to make a couple of both sides. I've got to make a piece of that channel. Kind of tore out when I was taking the car apart. You can really see better on this side, but that's not a big deal. So those are in. So I've just been cleaning up these reinforcements. So these are going to weld back in right there. So I'm going to finish grinding all the old metal off them. I'm just going to take them outside and just dust them off with the sandblaster. before welding them in there because they're kind of ugly. And then we'll get those welded in. We might just move on to cutting off a quarter panel. So I'd mentioned there being a chunk missing out of here. I just thought I would correct myself. I forgot there was these brackets that I'd cut out that they need to be welded in after. But they get fitted in right around there. So those are going to fill that gap back up. But those won't go in until I've got the floor pad in. So just a correction before you guys correct me. Poor man's plasma cutter. So I just used the nibbler to just roughly cut out that quarter panel. So with that out of the way, I'll finish taking this lip off, and then I figured I'm going to get in here and we're going to install the mini tub on this side. So this is going to give a lot more access before I start fitting the quarter panel. So we'll get all this inner stuff done. So yeah, I'm going to clean up a bunch of this stuff. I'm going to decide where I'm going to with the new quarter panel. Now these are just partial quarters. They go just like you see, 3/4 of an inch or so over that lip. But probably what I'm going to do is trim that off and just kind of go to here. I am going to leave a tiny bit of overlap in this case, or well, maybe not. Once I get it on there, maybe I'll do the cut and butt and do a proper butt weld. I'll see what's going to work best. Same on the back. These just kind of go over this edge just a bit. So we're not going to go over the edge. We're going to, yeah, I probably will just cut and butt that. And then the same up here. Down here, I don't really want to get into this flange. So I probably will leave a little bit of this at the bottom as well. So I'm going to start trimming this up, and then we're going to treat all this inner stuff before the new quarter panel goes back on. Well, it's the end of the day again, so made some pretty good progress today though. So we got the back panel in place, and then what you just saw me doing there, I got that one wide wheel tub put in permanently on this side. And then I've just gone ahead. I'd like to give everything a coat of the POR 15. That's the paint over rust 15. Really good quality rust paint. So we know that's all nice and sealed up before the new quarter panel goes on. And I've just kind of painted up in the wheel well. This is still going to need a bead of seam sealer up through that seam. So we'll do that. And before that quarter panel goes on, I'm going to be getting in here and putting some of this bracing back in. If you watched, might be the other side. Anyway, if you watched the first video on this car, you can see we had to cut a lot of this out for the wide wheel tubs, so that still needs to be kind of altered and cleaned up and welded back in. So I'll probably do that before the quarter panel goes back on, because I've got more access to some of this welding up in the package tray and these trunk hinge supports, like I showed you before. So let's get that closed. So that's why this trunk is sitting up a bit in the back. So I've kept all the gaps good, but this all kind of needs to be sucked down a little bit once it's welded into place to pull that gap down, but that is, again, minor stuff. So it is Friday. I've got another Chevy truck rust repair job booked in for next week, so might be another week or so before we get back on this one. But it's going to come together pretty quickly. And I will bring you guys back once I get back to her. So here's our factory trunk hinge support bracket, modified to fit. So I've shortened it, re-bent these flanges. Now that inside flange, it just wasn't bending the way I liked, so I figured it was best just to get it fitting nicely like this, and then I will just put a simple L bracket on the back side to add that strength back. But for now, I'm just going to get that welded into place, and then we can move on to that seat back brace. Alright, so that's welded in, so now I can release this little bit of pressure I've got on here. Like I mentioned before, just the body just needed to be up a hair, and then I'm kind of holding the trunk lid down into place while I was holding that up. So it's not a lot of tension on it, because you don't want to weld stuff together with a lot of tension, but it was just to pull that trunk lid kind of square. And I wanted to weld these brackets in before I put the quarter panel on, for obvious reasons. It's a lot easier to get in there. And I am just going to do one side at a time. It would be nice to get all these brackets in place on both sides, so then I can have the trunk square, but I want to do the quarter panels one side at a time. Again, that's just to keep the car square, so you don't want to cut too much apart all at once if you can avoid it sometimes. So yeah, I'm going to release this stuff, and then we'll move on to that rear seat brace. So moving on to the seat back brace. So I've taken this template that came with the Detroit Speed kit. It was first used to cut out this brace, and now I've had to trim to another line on the template. I've basically just kind of taped it down on there where it sits, and just blowing a little weld-through primer on there just to give me an idea where I'm going to cut. So now I'm going to trim that section out. We'll take it back in the car and see if it fits into place. So, back in the car with the modified brace, and I obviously didn't read the directions properly, I guess, because that needs to be trimmed back way more. That needs to be able to go in flush there. So, I think this needs to be trimmed out right into the edge in there. So, I'm going to have another look at the directions and that template and get that trimmed up properly. Alright, so back on the Chevy 2 again. So, actually Monday, almost the end of the day, working on something else for the day, but I have the rest of the week to just work on this one now, so we'll get some progress on her. So when I left off on this with you guys, I was working on this seat support. Now, this kit came with a template to cut that out. It didn't seem to fit, so I moved the template back to where I thought it was supposed to be, and then cut there, and it turns out I cut way too much off. So, as you can see, that's supposed to go all the way into the tub. So I just went ahead and just welded it in anyway. And what I've done, I have just made a filler piece that is going to just fill that gap. I'll plug weld that and put a few spot welds around it so it's solid to the tub. And then probably what I'll do is just do the exact same thing on the other side. Now, it's obviously one of those things, once it's got interior in it and stuff, that's gone forever, but I still want it to be as good as I can get it. So, yeah, so a little mess up there, but what do you do? It happens to the best of us, I'm sure. So I'm going to tack that thing in there, and then we're going to move on to putting the quarter panel on the car. Okay, so I've got that panel welded on the inside. It's kind of dark in here, but so that's out of the way. And then I've gone around and just kind of quickly cleaned up around the quarter panel where we're going to be attaching the new one. And then the new quarter, I have taken and cut that lip off all the way around. I left a bit at the back there because I'm not quite sure where I want to cut to there. But I'm going to give it its first test fit right now. Well, it's just rough fitted, but there is the first quarter panel in place. Everything seems to line up decent on it. Don't have any complaints. So yeah, so basically what I'll do from this point, I'll go around with a few self-tapping screws and get it exactly where I want it. And then I can peel it back off, get some weld-through primer on everything, clean up any rough edges, get everything so it's ready to go on for good. Then you just line it back up with those self-tapping screws and start welding. So it's the next day again. So I've been working away at this for a little bit, about an hour this morning. So I've got everything kind of trimmed back to where I'm happy with it. Cleaned up all the edges. I've gone around and put some weld-through primer where we're going to be actually overlapping a little bit of sheet metal. Now, on the subject of overlap or butt weld, I like to butt weld whenever possible, but sometimes you just need to make a call, and I think leaving a little overlap on this one is going to be a better option. It's going to give me a little bit of strength and a little bit of backing to weld to, just to stop getting too much warpage, because that it's a big long panel. Yeah, I just think it's the best option in this case. So I have the quarter panel ready to go on for probably the last time. So I'm going to grab that and get her in place. Okay, there is our panel in place. So, we've got a nice tight fit. I've deburred all the back side of everything so that it doesn't kind of hold it out from the panel. So nice and tight. You can see I've used, in places, see I'm kind of using like a combination of butt weld, you know, to lap weld, just whatever you need to do to make it fit really nice. Sometimes it's just what you do. So I'm gonna fire up the welder and start tacking this guy into place. So I'm going to keep repeating that process for a while. So lots of cooling time, small spots. If you try welding, you know, an inch at a time, you're going to warp the heck out of the panel. So we want to take our time, do this as slowly and carefully as we can. And yeah, I'm going to carry on, and then I'll bring you guys back for a look in a bit. So just a quick look part way through here, guys. I just thought I'd bring you in so you can see what I'm doing here is just tack weld, tack weld, tack weld. As I go along, I'm going to start going farther apart, letting them cool, and I'm going to keep going around like that, slowly and carefully until it's fully welded. Again, you don't want to try and do any big welds. I mean, even if you were to try and fill one of these gaps in one weld, you would probably end up with warping the panel. So far we're doing pretty good. So I'm gonna keep doing what I'm doing, and we'll come back in a bit. Okay, so there is 1/4 panel in place. I've got it all ground down. I've gone around, just kind of hit it with the sander, smoothed everything out. So before I'm finished, I will probably just go around and just check for any of these small little pinholes, touch them up with a welder, but that's quick and easy. So I think what I'm going to do next is just move to the other side of the car. I'm going to do everything we did on this side all over again. So on that note, I think I will just end this video here so it doesn't get too long. And then when we get back to this car on the next video, we'll move into the trunk and install the trunk floor, the extensions, the dropouts. We'll get that all taken care of. So, as always, guys, thanks for watching. Keep in mind, I don't do this trying to say I'm the best body man in the world. I'm just a guy that's okay at body work. I do these videos to, help some guys out, and so my customers can see how their projects are coming along too. So, at the end of the day, I've just got, pretty basic tools. I don't have a real fancy shop full of fancy equipment, but we get her done. So, if you enjoy the videos, if you find them helpful, just do me a favor, hit the like and subscribe. I certainly appreciate it. The channel just keeps on growing, so that's kind of exciting. So, as always, thanks again for watching. I hope we see you on the next one.